Lucas' heart stirred awake to the faint golden light of morning spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. The room smelled faintly of vanilla and jasmine, a lingering perfume that reminded him, with a pang of guilt, of the night he had spent with Selena. The sheets were tangled, the throw pillows scattered across the bed, and the soft hum of the city below seemed impossibly distant, as if the outside world had nothing to do with the storm about to hit him. Stretching his arms, he blinked against the sunlight and rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the lingering fog of sleep. And then his gaze fell on something utterly unfamiliar. A small, glinting object on the pristine white duvet caught his attention. He froze. It was delicate, familiar in a way that made his heart lurch. Amelia's engagement ring, the symbol of the life he had promised to honor, placed carefully beside a folded piece of paper. Lucas's pulse quickened, and an icy wave of panic surged through him. He reached for the note with trembling hands, unfolding it with a sense of dread that made his stomach churn. The words struck him like a physical blow, simple, painful, and final. "Lucas, I can't stay. I love you, but I can't watch this life unravel. Take care of yourself and take care of the baby. Goodbye." His mind reeled. Amelia was gone. Just like that, the woman who had been the center of his world had vanished, leaving only a piece of jewelry and a note that whispered of heartbreak and betrayal. Guilt and fear collided violently inside him, constricting his chest. The weight of his actions, the night with Selena, and the months of neglect he had brushed aside all hit him at once. Panic clawed at him as he frantically looked around the apartment, shouting her name. His voice breaking, but there was no answer. Amelia Hart had disappeared, and with her, the life he thought he controlled. Amelia Hart had always been the heart of their home, a gentle presence that balanced Lucas's intensity and ambition. Her soft laughter could fill a room, and her patience seemed endless, especially during these past months as she navigated the delicate challenges of pregnancy. She spent mornings sipping tea by the window, feeling the baby move, imagining the life she wanted for her family. Quiet dinners, weekend walks, and nights spent sharing dreams with Lucas. She had trusted him completely, believing that his charm, his smile, and the love he professed were enough to keep their bond strong. Their marriage had always seemed perfect on the surface. Lucas was attentive when it mattered, generous with gifts and grand gestures, always showing up for public appearances with a loving arm around Amelia. Friends often admired them, calling them a power couple, the embodiment of success and love. But behind closed doors, cracks had started to form. Lucas's work consumed him. He was constantly traveling, glued to his phone, and wrapped up in deadlines and meetings that seemed to eclipse everything else. Amelia tried to reach him emotionally, but he often responded with a distracted nod or a distracted smile, oblivious to the growing void between them. The pregnancy had heightened her sensitivity to these silences. Nights when she hoped for conversation, for comfort, for reassurance that he cared about the child growing inside her, often ended in disappointment. Each missed call, each cancelled dinner, each empty promise left her feeling more alone. She had tried to talk to him gently, explaining her worries, but Lucas always brushed them aside, believing that his hard work was proof of his love. Amelia clung to hope, trusting him to understand eventually, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. Her vulnerability was real, palpable, and yet she carried it with quiet dignity. She had given Lucas everything, her heart, her body, her dreams, and now she sensed that something vital was slipping away. Lucas, absorbed in his world, remained oblivious to the storm brewing in the life he thought was perfectly secure. The emotional stakes were high, and Amelia's quiet strength masked a growing fear that she might have to protect herself and their unborn child from the very man she had trusted most. Selena Reed was the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately commanded attention. Her confidence was magnetic, her words smooth and calculated, each smile and glance designed to make her the center of every conversation. Ambitious and cunning, she had learned early how to use charm and intellect as tools for manipulation, and when it came to Lucas' Hart, she had found the perfect target. He was wealthy, powerful, and susceptible to flattery, the kind of man who believed his own importance and craved admiration. Selena knew exactly how to feed that need, weaving a web of attention and false intimacy that left him both flattered and disoriented. From the very first encounter, she had made Lucas feel seen in a way that Amelia hadn't for months. She asked questions that mattered, laughed at his jokes, and listened intently as if his words carried the weight of the world. Little did he know that each gesture was calculated, each compliment a strategic step toward ensnaring him. Selena planted seeds of doubt about his marriage, framing Amelia's emotional distance as a lack of care or appreciation. Every touch, every whispered word, every late-night call was a reminder that she existed to fill the void he hadn't even admitted to having. Selena's ultimate goal was unambiguous. She wanted Lucas, his life and his wealth, and she was willing to destroy anything standing in her way. She painted herself as a confidant, someone who understood him better than anyone else, while subtly undermining Amelia, emphasizing her supposed shortcomings, and feeding Lucas's ego. She made him feel guilty for not giving her the attention she claimed he owed, all the while casting herself as the victim of circumstance. Lucas, for all his success, was blindsided by her tactics. Desire warred with conscience inside him, guilt pressing at the edges of his mind even as her seduction pulled him further in. He rationalized, excused, and justified his actions, ignoring the quiet alarms that should have warned him of danger. Selena had mastered the art of illusion, and Lucas, caught in a perfect storm of flattery, lust, and self-deception, began to drift dangerously close to the line that would destroy everything he had built. His marriage, his family, and ultimately, his own peace of mind. The evening had started innocently enough, Lucas telling himself it was just a harmless dinner with a friend, a casual meeting that could be excused as work-related. Selena, dressed in a sleek black dress that accentuated her every curve, greeted him with a smile that was both disarming and intoxicating. She laughed at his jokes, leaned closer as he spoke, and brushed her hand against his arm with a touch that lingered a moment too long. Lucas felt the familiar warmth of desire awaken in his chest, paired immediately with a sharp pang of guilt that made his stomach twist. As the night progressed, cocktails loosened their inhibitions. Lucas found himself sharing stories he hadn't told Amelia in years, revealing thoughts and frustrations he had kept buried. Selena listened with rapt attention, nodding, leaning in, making him feel as though he had finally found someone who understood him completely. Every compliment she gave, every coy look she offered, chipped away at the defenses he had tried to maintain. He kept glancing at his watch, telling himself this was harmless, temporary, a fleeting escape, yet the moral conflict gnawed at him relentlessly. By the time they returned to Selena's apartment, the city lights casting long shadows across the room, the tension between guilt and desire had become unbearable. He knew what he was about to do was wrong, that it would shatter the trust Amelia had placed in him, but the pull of temptation, of the ego boost Selena provided, proved stronger in the moment. Their intimacy was fraught, each touch mingling pleasure with remorse, passion with regret. Lucas's mind raced with images of Amelia, her kind eyes, her trusting smile, the baby growing inside her, and he pushed them aside, trying to justify his actions to himself. Meanwhile, miles away, Amelia sat in her quiet apartment, her hands resting gently on her rounded belly. She had felt the distance growing for months, seen the signs she had desperately tried to ignore. Now, fully aware of Selena's manipulations and Lucas's weakening attention, she made a choice. With careful, deliberate planning, she packed a small bag, left notes for friends she could trust, and prepared to leave without confrontation, to protect herself and her unborn child from the heartbreak and neglect that had quietly festered in her marriage. The stark contrast between the two worlds could not have been clearer. Lucas indulged in lust, blinded by temptation and self-deception, while Amelia acted with clarity, foresight, and courage. One night of reckless desire was about to collide with a lifetime of carefully laid plans, setting the stage for a dramatic fallout that neither could ignore. Amelia sat on the edge of their bed, the soft morning light filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room she had shared with Lucas for years. Her hands rested gently on her rounded belly, feeling the tiny, reassuring movements of the life she carried. Every flutter reminded her why she had made the decision she was about to carry out, a decision born not from anger, but from self-preservation and the desperate need to protect her child. She had loved Lucas with all her heart, trusted him implicitly, and sacrificed so much for their life together. Yet, the years of neglect, emotional distance, and betrayal had quietly eroded the foundation of their marriage. Now, the choice was clear. She could no longer remain in a space where her heart and her child's safety were at risk. Carefully, she unfolded a piece of stationery and began to write. Her words flowed with the mixture of pain and love that had defined her life with Lucas. She poured her emotions onto the page, explaining that she could no longer ignore the growing chasm between them, the lies, and the distractions that had replaced the care and attention she once knew. She emphasized that her love for him had never wavered, but love alone could not sustain her in the absence of respect, honesty, and partnership. The note was not a condemnation, but a plea for him to recognize the gravity of his actions, to understand what he had lost, and to reflect on the man he had become. Once the letter was complete, she placed her engagement ring neatly beside it. The ring, a symbol of their vows and shared dreams, now served as a poignant reminder of everything she had given, everything she had hoped for, and everything he had allowed to slip through his fingers. The act felt final, yet strangely liberating. She packed a small bag with essentials, arranging her plans to ensure safety and anonymity. Trusted friends would provide temporary shelter, and she had secured appointments and necessities to remain out of harm's way. Every detail was carefully considered, every precaution deliberate. Amelia understood that this was not abandonment. It was survival. She kissed her belly, whispered words of comfort to the child growing within her, and took a deep, steadying breath. With one last glance at the home that had once been a sanctuary, Amelia left the apartment quietly, the note and ring left on the bed like a silent testament. She vanished from Lucas's life that morning, determined to protect herself and her unborn child, and to reclaim her strength, her dignity, and the life that awaited her beyond betrayal. Lucas froze, staring at the engagement ring and the folded note lying on the bed. His fingers trembled as he picked up the delicate jewelry, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. He unfolded the note with shaking hands, his eyes scanning Amelia's carefully written words. Each sentence cut deeper than the last, each word a hammer striking against his chest. "I can't stay. I love you, but I can't watch this life unravel. Take care of yourself and take care of the baby. Goodbye." The simplicity of it made it almost cruel. No anger, no shouting, just the stark reality of her departure. Panic surged like wildfire through him, his thoughts spinning in every direction at once. He stumbled backward, almost dropping the note, and his phone slipped from his grasp as he reached for it again. He called her number, dialing and redialing, each ring echoing his growing desperation. Voicemail. Another call. Nothing. He texted frantically, each message more pleading than the last, each read receipt haunting him with its silent confirmation that she had seen none of it. His friends and family were next, a flurry of calls and messages begging for information, advice, guidance, anyone who might know where Amelia had gone. No one had seen her. His mind spiraled, guilt clawing at him in waves. The night with Selena replayed relentlessly in his memory. Every touch, every whispered word, every rationalization for his betrayal now a weight crushing him. How could he have been so blind, so selfish, so reckless? The life he had taken for granted, Amelia's love, their unborn child, the trust they had built, seemed to vanish before his eyes. He had risked everything for a fleeting moment of desire, and now the consequences were inescapable. Lucas ran through scenarios, every possible mistake he had made, every lie he had allowed to fester. His chest tightened, breath coming fast and shallow as fear settled in. Amelia had left for her own safety, for their child's safety, and he was left alone with the devastation he had caused. The reality struck him fully. He could no longer pretend, no longer justify. His infidelity, his neglect, his choices had driven the woman he loved away. Panic turned to despair, and despair to determination. He had to find her. He had to make things right, but a small, nagging fear whispered that some damage might be irreversible. Lucas paced the length of his penthouse, phone clutched tightly in his hand, the panic from the morning now morphing into a frantic urgency. He started with the hospital, dialing the maternity ward where Amelia had her first checkups. Each time the receptionist answered, his voice trembled with desperation. "Has Mrs. Hart been here today? Any appointments?" Each negative response made his chest tighten further, a growing sense of dread gnawing at him. From there, he moved on to the places Amelia often visited. Her favorite coffee shop, the boutique she loved, the small park where she liked to sit and read. At each location, he asked after her, explained his concern, only to be met with shakes of the head or sympathetic apologies. It felt like a puzzle with pieces deliberately hidden, and the more he searched, the more he realized that Amelia had vanished with careful precision. His attempts to reach her through mutual friends only partially helped. Some offered comfort, others information, but most admitted they hadn't seen her. Lucas could feel the weight of each unanswered call, each vague answer pressing down on him. And then came the interference of Selena. When he called her, hoping she might know something, her voice was smooth and composed, deliberately misleading. "Maybe she just needed space," she said, her tone innocently concerned, yet every word felt like a calculated push to keep him from the truth. Her manipulation stoked his anxiety further, making him question whether she knew more than she let on. As he retraced Amelia's steps, Lucas began to notice the method behind her disappearance. Nothing seemed accidental. The timing, the careful selection of destinations, the lack of any traceable digital footprint. A chilling realization settled over him. Amelia had planned this carefully, anticipating his reactions, ensuring that her departure would be deliberate and irreversible if necessary. The clarity of her strategy both awed and terrified him. With each passing hour, the fear inside Lucas grew. He understood painfully that this was not a temporary disappearance fueled by anger or impulse. Amelia had acted with intention. The woman he had loved, the woman carrying his child, was gone by design. And the gravity of his actions, the betrayal he had allowed, pressed down on him heavier than he could have imagined, leaving him desperate, anxious, and acutely aware that finding her would not be simple. Selena noticed the change in Lucas almost immediately. The usually composed, confident man was now frantic. His messages desperate. His tone laced with panic. She could feel the thrill of control coursing through her. This was exactly what she had anticipated. With each missed call, each frantic text, she leaned further into her role, planting subtle, insidious doubts designed to twist his perception. When Lucas called her, hoping for information or guidance, she responded with practiced nonchalance. "Maybe she's just upset," she said, her voice soft and coaxing. "Maybe she needed space. You know how sensitive she can be." Her words were measured, carefully chosen to sound supportive while simultaneously casting Amelia as unpredictable and unstable. Each suggestion was a seed of doubt, meant to keep Lucas looking to her for reassurance, to rely on her interpretation of events rather than trusting his own instincts. Over the next hours, Selena escalated her manipulations. She hinted that Amelia's disappearance might not be temporary, that she might have planned this to leave him forever. "She's probably trying to make a point," Selena whispered one evening over the phone, her tone dripping with feigned sympathy. "You can't always expect her to come back. Maybe she's done with all of this. With you, with your life." Her carefully constructed lies pressed against the raw nerves of Lucas's guilt, exploiting every ounce of self-doubt he carried from the night before. But as the hours stretched on, Lucas began to sense cracks in her story. He noticed inconsistencies in her words, moments when her tone didn't match her supposed concern. Her eagerness to provide interpretation rather than information. Her subtle attempts to divert his attention away from concrete facts, and the way she seemed almost too eager to keep him dependent on her counsel made a chilling pattern emerge. For the first time, Lucas saw Selena for what she truly was. Manipulative, cunning, and entirely self-serving. The realization hit him hard, mixing with his panic and guilt, forcing him to acknowledge that while he had been blindsided by desire, he had also been manipulated. Her influence, seductive and calculated, had played directly into his weaknesses, and now he knew he had to untangle himself from her web if there was any hope of finding Amelia and salvaging what remained of his shattered life. Amelia settled into the quiet safety of her friend's apartment, the soft hum of the city outside a distant backdrop to her racing thoughts. Every detail of her escape had been meticulously planned, from packing only what she could carry to leaving the note and ring for Lucas to find. She had made sure that her movements left no digital trace, that her phone and accounts couldn't be tracked, and that her presence in this temporary sanctuary was shielded from anyone who might seek her out. Most importantly, she had ensured the safety of her unborn child, the life that had given her courage to make the hardest choice of her life. Sitting by the window, Amelia reflected on the months leading up to this moment. The distance in her marriage, Lucas's distracted gaze, and the growing tension that had once seemed insignificant now appeared as glaring warnings she could no longer ignore. Her heart ached as she thought of the man she had once trusted so completely, the man she had imagined building a family with. Every memory of laughter, shared dreams, and tender moments clashed painfully with the reality of his betrayal. Yet, in that ache, there was also clarity, the realization that love alone was not enough when respect, honesty, and commitment were absent. Her decision had not come from anger, spite, or revenge. It had come from necessity and love for herself, and love for the child growing within her. She had carried the weight of hope and disappointment silently for months, and now she acted not in impulsive rage but with calculated courage. Each step she had taken reinforced her independence, her resourcefulness, and her resilience. Though loneliness lingered, it was tempered by a sense of empowerment. Amelia knew that leaving Lucas was not abandoning love but protecting it, preserving the part of herself that could thrive without being crushed by betrayal. In this sanctuary, away from the chaos and deceit, she could breathe, plan, and prepare for the future. Her strength shone quietly, a testament to her courage, and in the stillness of that evening, she allowed herself to hope that one day, perhaps, love and trust could exist again, untainted by the past. Lucas sat alone in his darkened apartment, the city lights outside casting long shadows across the floor as his mind replayed every event of the past days. The engagement ring and Amelia's note lay untouched on the table, a constant, silent reminder of the life he had taken for granted. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. Selena's words, once comforting and persuasive, now revealed themselves as calculated manipulation. Every hint, every subtle suggestion that Amelia had abandoned him, every attempt to keep him dependent on her interpretation of events, had been designed to control him. The truth hit him harder than he could have imagined. It wasn't just Selena's lies that had led to this devastation. It was his own actions, his infidelity, and the years of neglect that had driven a wedge between him and Amelia. He had allowed his desires and ego to cloud his judgment, ignoring the small signs, the quiet pleas for attention and reassurance, and the subtle sadness that had begun to shadow her eyes. The weight of his betrayal pressed down on him, a crushing reminder that he had endangered the woman he loved and the child she carried. As he reflected on Amelia's carefully orchestrated departure, a new understanding emerged. She had acted not out of spite but out of love and self-preservation, protecting herself and their unborn child from further harm. Every step of her escape, every precaution she had taken, spoke to her strength, foresight, and courage, qualities he had taken for granted. Remorse filled him, a deep, gnawing ache that could no longer be ignored or rationalized away. He realized that change was imperative, that he could not continue down the path of selfishness and neglect. His heart ached with the knowledge of the pain he had caused, and for the first time, he truly comprehended the gravity of his mistakes. Determined to make amends, Lucas began planning his path forward. He would sever ties with Selena, confront his own flaws, and fight to regain Amelia's trust. It would not be easy. Forgiveness was not guaranteed, and the road to redemption would be long and fraught with obstacles. But Lucas understood one undeniable truth. If he wanted to save his marriage, to protect the life he had helped create, he had to confront his failures head-on, embrace responsibility, and prove that he could be the man Amelia and their child deserved. Lucas stormed into Selena's apartment, his heart hammering with a mix of anger, guilt, and determination. The moment she saw him standing there, her confident, poised facade faltered for the briefest instant. "Lucas, she began, her voice attempting casual control, but he cut her off, voice sharp and trembling with emotion. "I know everything, Selena," he said, stepping closer, his eyes burning with intensity. "The lies, the manipulation. I see it all now. You twisted every word, every gesture to keep me under your control. You made me doubt Amelia, made me question her intentions, and you used my weaknesses against me." His chest heaved as he spoke, the words pouring out in a torrent of accusation and pain. Selena's lips curled into a defensive smirk. "I didn't force you to do anything, Lucas. You chose this. You came to me. Don't try to pin it all on me," she shot back, her tone venomous yet practiced. "You were lonely, insecure, looking for someone to admire you. I only gave you what you wanted. You gave me lies, Selena," Lucas snapped, his voice rising. "You fed my ego and blinded me to the truth. You preyed on my mistakes instead of letting me face them. And now I see the consequences of letting you in. Amelia is gone, and I've risked everything for this. This illusion you created." Selena's composure cracked slightly, her carefully crafted mask slipping. She tried to argue, to manipulate, to turn the blame back onto him, but Lucas no longer wavered. With each word, each accusation, he felt the chains of her influence breaking. He realized he no longer needed her validation or guidance, that the responsibility for his actions rested solely with him, and that he had to make it right. "I'm done with this, Selena," he said firmly, his voice steady now, resolute. "I am done with your games. I won't let you control me, and I won't let you ruin what's left of my life. I have to fix what I broke, and that means leaving you behind." Selena stared at him, a mixture of shock and fury crossing her features, but Lucas didn't flinch. Turning away, he left the apartment, each step lighter than before. For the first time in weeks, clarity replaced confusion, remorse fueled purpose, and he was ready to fight for Amelia, for their child, and for the life he had almost destroyed. Lucas's heart pounded as he approached the quiet building, the address Amelia had reluctantly given him over a brief, guarded message. Each step felt heavier than the last, a mixture of dread and hope twisting in his chest. When he finally reached the door and knocked, a moment stretched unbearably long before it opened, revealing Amelia standing there. She looked the same and yet profoundly changed, composed, strong, yet with eyes that held the weight of heartbreak and exhaustion. "Amelia," he breathed, his voice cracking. She didn't step aside immediately, her gaze steady and unyielding, forcing him to meet the depth of her pain. I found you," he continued, his hands trembling, reaching out instinctively but unsure if she would let him. She didn't respond at first, her silence a powerful shield. Tears welled in Lucas's eyes as he took in the sight of her, the woman he had betrayed, and the reality of what his choices had cost. "I've made terrible mistakes," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I was blind. I was selfish. I betrayed your trust. And I nearly lost you and our child. I can't change the past, but I swear to you, I'll do everything to make this right. I'll be better. I'll fight for us, for you, for our baby." Amelia's expression softened slightly, though her pain remained visible. She stepped back, letting him in cautiously, her movements measured. She listened to every word, her chest tight with conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, and the faintest glimmer of hope. She wanted to believe him, to allow herself to hope that Lucas could truly change, but the hurt was deep, carved by months of neglect and one catastrophic lapse of judgment. The air between them was charged with tension. Tears threatened to spill as Lucas reached for her hand, gently, reverently, careful not to push her away. "I understand if you don't forgive me yet," he murmured, "but I'll prove to you that I can be the man you and our child deserve." Amelia's lips quivered as she responded softly. "You've broken me, Lucas, but maybe, just maybe, we can start again. Slowly. The reunion was bittersweet, a delicate balance between heartbreak and hope. They embraced, not fully healed but connected by the undeniable bond of love, commitment, and the shared future of the child growing inside her. Uncertainty lingered, but for the first time in weeks, both felt a fragile sense of possibility, a chance to rebuild what had been nearly lost. The weeks following their reunion were filled with quiet, deliberate steps toward healing. Lucas and Amelia knew that rebuilding trust would not be instantaneous. It required patience, honesty, and an unwavering commitment to confronting the past together. They began attending therapy sessions, both individually and as a couple, where they explored the roots of their struggles. Lucas's distraction and selfishness, Amelia's growing sense of neglect, and the emotional gaps that had allowed Selena to infiltrate their lives. Each session was intense, at times bringing fresh waves of pain, but also opening doors to understanding, communication, and growth. At home, conversations that had once been mundane took on new weight. They spoke openly about fears, regrets, and desires, breaking down barriers that had long prevented true intimacy. Lucas listened, really listened, without defensiveness, allowing Amelia to express the anger and disappointment she had carried for so long. In these moments, she saw his remorse as genuine, his commitment to change real. He acknowledged each failure with humility, offering reassurances not as empty promises, but as tangible steps, adjusting his schedule to prioritize family, attending prenatal appointments, and actively participating in decisions regarding their future child. Amelia, in turn, allowed herself to be vulnerable, sharing the depth of her pain and the small fractures of trust that still lingered. Forgiveness did not come easily. It was a process she weighed carefully, testing the consistency of Lucas's actions against the sincerity of his words. Each day presented opportunities to observe his transformation, the way he prioritized her needs, the respect he showed in conversations, and the patience he demonstrated when her trust wavered. Slowly, trust began to rebuild layer by layer. Moments of laughter returned, shared glances and touches carried renewed significance, and the emotional intimacy they had lost began to bloom again. They discovered a renewed sense of partnership, one rooted not in superficial gestures but in deliberate effort, accountability, and mutual respect. By the end of this period, Lucas and Amelia had not erased the past, but they had forged a stronger, more honest bond. Healing and forgiveness had become a shared journey, one that demanded courage and commitment, yet promised a future where love, trust, and the anticipation of their child's arrival could coexist with the lessons learned from betrayal. Months passed, and the long-awaited day finally arrived. Amelia labored with strength and determination, supported by Lucas, who remained by her side every step of the way. Gone were the distractions, the excuses, and the selfishness that had once pulled them apart. His remorse was no longer abstract. It manifested in steady hands, encouraging words, and unwavering presence. When their baby finally cried for the first time, Lucas felt a rush of gratitude, love, and relief, realizing fully the fragility and preciousness of the life they had created together. Holding their healthy newborn in her arms, Amelia felt a profound mix of joy and reflection. The months of pain, betrayal, and uncertainty seemed to converge into this singular, life-changing moment. Lucas watched them both, awe and reverence shining in his eyes. He whispered apologies and promises under his breath, understanding that actions, not words, would forever define his commitment. The past could not be erased, but it had forged a new appreciation for love, trust, and responsibility. Meanwhile, the truth about Selena's manipulations became public. News outlets reported on her schemes, the lies she had spun, and the emotional havoc she had caused. Lucas faced the consequences of his infidelity as well. Professional colleagues and friends were aware of his mistakes, and he took responsibility openly, determined to rebuild his reputation through integrity and humility. The experience left an indelible mark, one that reshaped his priorities and values permanently. As a family, Lucas, Amelia, and their newborn embarked on a new chapter. They were stronger, more united, and deeply aware of the fragility and beauty of trust. Lessons about love, resilience, and forgiveness became guiding principles, shaping not only their relationship but the environment in which their child would grow. The shadows of betrayal had receded, replaced by a sense of hope and renewal. For Lucas and Amelia, this new beginning was not merely a fresh start. It was a testament to the enduring power of accountability, courage, and the unwavering strength of family.